In the corner of a 350-year-old engraving, someone drew an animal that shouldn't be there. A camel, but the wrong kind. The kind we're told died out long before anyone could have seen it. There are hundreds of old paintings of the Tower of Babel. Most of them are dreamy, symbolic things. Towers shaped like funnels, corkscrews, wedding cakes, clouds drifting past the top. Nobody mistakes them for architecture. But there's one that doesn't behave like the others. It's an engraving, and it feels less like a painting and more like a photograph drawn in pencil. Every ramp lands where a ramp should land. Every terrace holds weight. And the longer you look at it, the more it stops feeling like an artist's daydream and starts feeling like a record of something. Then you notice the animals at the base, and the whole picture tilts. Before we get into it, if you keep coming back to this channel, thank you. A subscribe and a like help more than you'd guess, and even one new subscriber genuinely moves the needle here. And the usual honest note. This is just the best I've been able to piece together from the plate itself and the record around it. If it clashes with what you know, no hard feelings. None of it's the final word. And the picture can change the moment better evidence turns up. Start with why this image stops people. It's dense. Tiny figures move along the ramps with somewhere to be. Not decorative crowds, but workers with a job. Markets are running partway up the structure. There are homes on the terraces. People live on this thing while it's being built. Down at the base, brick ovens sit smoldering, feeding fresh material up into the work. That's not a symbolic touch. That's a supply chain. Whoever laid this out understood how a building of that size would actually have to be fed. And then you pull back from the tower itself, out toward the horizon, and there are other towers out there, smaller, distant, but the same shape. The same idea, repeated across the landscape, which changes the story completely. This isn't one impossible tower standing alone in an empty world. It's the biggest one in a whole family of them. The masterpiece at the end of a long tradition, the way a great ship or a great aircraft is never the first of its kind, just the furthest anyone pushed it. And it's down at the foot of that tower, among the workers and the carts, that something is standing where it has no business standing. It's a camel, or something extremely close to one. And the first thing you notice is that it's wrong. Not slightly off, wrong. It's taller than it should be. Longer, standing far too upright, with a neck that stretches up like a giraffe's. Next to the man leading it, the animal stands close to twice his height. Now, one oversized animal in an old engraving means nothing. Artists exaggerate, but this one doesn't appear once. It appears again and again, walking, kneeling, loaded with cargo, being led by hand, each time in a slightly different posture, each time drawn with the same confidence. And that's the part that itches. You can invent a creature once. Drawing the same unfamiliar animal from 4 different angles and having the joints and the weight land correctly every time is a different kind of task. That usually comes from having seen the thing. So people started asking what it actually resembles. And one answer that keeps coming back is a name most of us have never heard: Titanotilopus. One of the giant camels of the deep past, known today only from broken bone in dig sites. According to everything we're taught, nobody in the 1600s should have been able to draw that animal from life. So how did it end up carrying bricks at the foot of Babel? That question sends you looking for who made the plate. And that's where it gets tangled, because there are 2 signatures on it, and they don't match. Down in the lower left, cut into the stone blocks of the wall itself, is a name. C. Decker Fessett. Decker made this. It sits inside the picture, like it was chiseled into the masonry, part of the world, not stuck on top of it. Then look to the lower right, a second name, in lighter script, sitting in a flattened band that cuts straight across the lines of the image. I. Croyle Auditor de Lin, 1670. And that one doesn't belong. It doesn't follow the architecture. It doesn't sit in the scene. It lies across it, like a label. So one theory writes itself, and it's a good one. What if the plate is far older than we think? Copper plates survive things paper never could. Flood, mud, fire. What if this one came through some old catastrophe intact, was found centuries later, and someone put their name and a fresh date across the corner of a picture they didn't make? Under that reading, 1670 isn't the year it was created, it's the year it was claimed. It's a clean theory. It's also, I think, where I have to be straight with you. Because there's an ordinary explanation for those two signatures, and once you know it, you can't unsee it. In the 1600s, a printed image was almost never one person's work. One man drew the design, a second man cut it into the copper, and they signed with different words to say which job they did. Delinevit, shortened to Delin, means drew it. Face it means made it, meaning cut the plate. So the two names aren't a mystery and a forgery. They're a credit line. Cruel drew it, Decker engraved it. Both signed, the way thousands of prints from that century do. But look at what that answer hands us, because it's bigger than what it takes away. Lieven Cruel wasn't a fantasy painter. He was a draftsman who worked in architecture, a man trained to draw buildings that could actually stand. That's why the ramps carry weight. That's why the terraces hold. The tower looks buildable because an architect laid it out. And the camel? The usual answer is that European artists of that era drew exotic animals they'd never laid eyes on, working from travelers' descriptions, and got them wrong on a routine basis. Fair enough, that happened constantly, but it doesn't quite cover this one. A misheard description gives you one clumsy animal, drawn once. This animal shows up over and over from different angles, mealing, loaded, lead, and the anatomy holds together every time. Whatever the explanation is, something gave that artist a consistent picture to work from. So park the camel for a moment, because we still haven't asked the most important question of all. Who wanted this drawn, and what was he working from? The plate was made for a book published in 1679 by a scholar named Athanasius Kircher. And here's the thing nobody mentions. Kircher never treated Babel as a fable. To him, it was history, or real structure, raised by real people in a real place. He wasn't asking whether it stood, he took that as settled and moved straight to the harder question. How big was it actually? So he worked at it like an engineer. He worked out the footprint, the materials, the load, what it would take to raise something like that off the ground and keep it standing. That's why the ramps carry weights and the terraces make sense. You're not looking at a daydream, you're looking at a reconstruction. A man attempting to rebuild on paper a building he was certain had once existed. And Kircher was no crank. He was one of the most learned men alive in his century, sitting on a library most scholars would never get near, working from ancient accounts and manuscripts, some of which don't survive today at all. Which means this engraving may be carrying details that came from sources we've since lost. The one place he drew a line was the old claim that the tower reached heaven itself. He ran the numbers and said no, not that far. Read that carefully though. He wasn't arguing about whether it was built. He was arguing about how high it got. And that's a very different argument. So the through line is simpler than the theories we brought to it, and stranger. The most convincing image of the Tower of Babel ever made looks convincing because the man behind it believed he was drawing a real building and reached back through old sources to reconstruct it stone by stone. And the camel is still standing there at the base, unexplained, in a picture where almost everything else was worked out on purpose. That's what I keep turning over. If the tower was drawn from what someone genuinely believed was the record, what was the camel drawn from?